There are 3 points in the school where you have to stop the ventilation. So my colleagues know that here I can stop the ventilation.
If there's an order to give them to everyone, we give them to the children, to everyone.
Bernard Stich is the head teacher of the Arc-en-Ciel or Rainbow School. It's a small primary school in the Alsace region of eastern France, a school like many others, except for one main difference. Here, teachers and children undergo drills to be prepared for a nuclear accident.
Our first duty is to get the children to safety, and that means getting them indoors. Once inside, school life can continue as normal. Once the children are safe and all the windows and doors are closed, we can live here quite normally for a certain period of time. There are toilets, there's water.
From making sure all doors and windows are shut, that the phones are working and fresh water is available, Mr. Stich says it's part of his job to be ready.
We do this drill every year to check that it's up to standard, because we know that it could perhaps happen. Personally, I trust the management to prevent it happening, but we live with the risk.
Living with the risk, a familiar phrase for the residents of Fessenheim, the site of France's oldest nuclear power plant and one increasingly under scrutiny since Japan's nuclear accident. Fessenheim has been operating since 1977 and is built directly over the Rhine fault line. Jean-Paul Lecotte has been demonstrating against nuclear energy since the mid-70s. Although the last major earthquake in the area dates back to the 14th century, Lecotte argues there's no guarantee there couldn't be another, even stronger one. He wants Fessenheim closed.
Normally, a nuclear plant has cooling towers, but this plant has no cooling towers. They take water from the canal, which is always full, but the canal could develop a leak. There's another problem too. Large sections of the nuclear plant are built beneath the water level of the canal. So if the canal sprang a leak, then the plant would be flooded.
EDF, the French electricity company, says Fessenheim is constantly reinforced and a protective barrier has been built to avoid any flooding or rupture problems. For Fessenheim's director, the accident at Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant will make France even more watchful, more transparent about whether their reactors are safe.
Of course, in France there's a strictly independent nuclear authority which enforces high safety standards and regularly inspects the site. They made 22 visits to the site in 2010, for example. That's around once a fortnight on average. And during inspections, the Nuclear Safety Authority evaluates the way we implement the safety rules, the road safety code, our management of this installation, and the evaluations are done in a very transparent way. And I can tell you that at the annual meeting, the Safety Authority said that we maintain completely satisfactory standards in terms of detection and declaration of error margin.
Information and transparency. Comforting words to a country that has 58 nuclear reactors, the second highest after the United States. But for some, this information just covers up a political decision to keep nuclear plants open no matter the risk.
15 years ago, it was really hard to tie them down and get them to answer questions. They just fobbed you off a bit. Right now, the idea is to give you loads of information, which means you're drowning in data, but with no way of evaluating that information. It's just a way of saying, don't worry, everything's fine. Now have a look, there's nothing to see.
Fessenheim's 2,500 residents are now used to the media limelight after Japan's catastrophe has again cast doubts on nuclear safety. Georges Béranger has lived in Fessenheim since 1961. He says at first there was opposition to building nuclear reactors in what was once the poorest region of Alsace.
Before the plant was built, someone came round to our house on a Sunday afternoon. I said, "What is it?" "We've come to save you." "Ooh, save us from what?" "Nuclear danger." Well, that was 30 years ago. So I asked him if he knew Fessenheim. He said no, no one knew Fessenheim. Even the people from around here were leaving because there was nothing, no work, no money.
There is little doubt that Fessenheim's nuclear plant has brought prosperity to the town. The plant employs over 900 people full-time, and Fessenheim's revenues are equivalent to those of a town 5 times its size. But the deputy mayor insists the safety of his residents is top priority.
Fessenheim was put into service in 1977, so that makes 30 years that we've lived with it, the nuclear plant. So for me, it's just part of the industrial landscape. And today, well, I don't know if you've been able to interview people living here, people in Fessenheim. They're not particularly frightened, even after what happened in Japan. There were a few questions perhaps, but no special fear. You don't feel any special fear here in Fessenheim.
Every 4 years, residents living within a 10-kilometer radius of the nuclear power plant are issued iodine pills, a treatment to protect the thyroid from any eventual radiation. It's a routine Fessenheim's residents are used to, but with the Japanese catastrophe, it's people living outside the radius who are worried.
I've had calls from Paris, Besançon, Lyon, people who are worried about what's happened in Japan. They're not near a nuclear reactor, but they're worried. They think it'd be good to have iodine tablets just in case, so they phone me or come into the shop for tablets. But because they don't live around here, they don't live within the 10-kilometer zone around the plant, I can't supply them with tablets.
Some 200 kilometers away from Fessenheim, Chantal Garnier can understand why people are scared. Chantal developed thyroid cancer less than a year after the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. She blames a lack of transparency at the time from French nuclear authorities, who, in her words, claimed the nuclear cloud had stopped at the border. She and other thyroid patients are suing them. She understands why today many people still worry about a potential nuclear fallout.
People like us who live 200 or 300 kilometers or even further away from a nuclear reactor have nothing to protect them. We know that if there was an accident, radiation would get into the rivers, the lakes, absolutely everywhere, and we don't have any protection against that. But it's true that people very close to reactors feel more protected because they have their little preventative pills. They don't take them, but they have them, so they could take them if they were authorized to.
A feeling of protection, of safety. While these sentiments are shared by most of Fessenheim's residents, they also claim they're not naive.
We're not protected from all risks. No industry today is 100% risk-free, but the risk is minimal.
Absolutely. We have a nuclear reactor next door. That changes things, but doesn't turn daily life upside down. We live with it. It isn't a worry at all. We don't feel like we have a weight on our shoulders.
While these people have learned to live with their nuclear neighbor, calls for a national referendum on the future of nuclear energy could pave the way for troubled waters in a debate which is far from over.